welcome to another edition of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and on this episode, we have the one, the only, the Meghan Hall on the show with us. Want to bring her on, kind of give her story, her ever-evolving story in sports media coverage. We're going to get into that a little bit later in the show, but up first is the Get Off Your Chest segment. We talk about a Black woman in history that created history to open up for Women's History Month. And I have a new one for you all on this one, and that is Zendaya. Yeah, everybody knows her from Euphoria and things like that. We're going to get to that, but we're going to give you a little bit of the first of this story about her, okay? A lot of people probably don't know, but Zendaya was actually Zendaya Sterner Coleman. Yes, she has a last name, people. Coleman was born on September 1st, 1996 in California. Yes, she was born in the Bay. Her father was a black man, of course, obviously, and her mom is of German and Scottish ancestry. There you go, Zendaya. Okay, she attended Fruitvale Elementary School, where her mother taught for 2 decades. So yes, her mom was a teacher. She first started acting when she performed in a play for Black History Month with 2 of her friends when she was younger. Of course, she continued to grow with additional performances, but she also sang and danced as well. So, kind of the triple threat: sing, dance, act, do all those things. She would continue to act as she was in, of course, high school. But before that, of course, she would do some work with Disney 2009. Of course, with singing and acting. And she did that from 2009 to 2015. And she also would, of course, continue to act in high school. She went to Oakland School of the Arts, actually. So you get a sense, this Zendaya is from the Bay, which I didn't know this. This is something new to me. There you go. But, of course, she would, eventually transition. She wanted to get out of the Disney role she had been in and all those different Disney things she's done, the little cute stuff that everybody likes. She kind of got out of that, and then she went on to do some more adult acting. She went to do she was in Spider-Man Homecoming, and then she was in The Greatest Showman with Zac Efron. And then her most challenging role and her most adult role came about when she took on the role of Rue, a 17-year-old addict on the show Euphoria. Now, everyone loved the performance that she had, and she would win an Emmy for that performance in 2019. And when winning that Emmy in 2019, she would be the youngest winner ever of an Emmy. Zendaya Coleman, as they call her. She is a part of Black history, and she is a Black woman making history. Now, I got to ask you, first question, Meghan, did you know that she had a last name before today?
I mean, I assumed she had a last name, like most folks do, but I don't think I ever thought to myself, like, what is her last name? It's just, hey, she's been known professionally as Zendaya, and like, that's what I'm going to call her.
Yep. Well, they call her Zendaya Coleman back in the hood. I guess what they could call her. But and then also, did you know that? I mean, I kind of enjoy her more adult acting than I did the Disney acting. I guess it's just my age, but Euphoria, I've watched it. I mean, it's very interesting, and she definitely pushes the envelope of the things that she can do within that show. I mean, I've watched it. Have you watched that show before?
No, I actually, oddly, and I know, I'm sorry, anybody listening, I did not watch the show. I remember the hype of it. I remember, like, people were tweeting and Facebooking crazy about the show. I just remember people talking about, like, yeah, how well she had done in the show and how realistic she made those scenes feel. But I wasn't necessarily shocked by that. She's Spider-Man. That's where I associate Zendaya from. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, if it's movies, you could do shows as well and still still affect the same sort of emotions and change. So, but yeah, I mean, hey, maybe I'll have to go back and watch that. I feel like I need time to like just dedicate where I don't have the force of Twitter telling me like what to think, so I could just watch it.
Now I'll tell you, there's another actress in that movie that's in that. I'm sorry, in that show, that's Storm Reed as well. Now she just kind of, she's I believe at USC now in school there, but she's kind of coming of age of herself as well. So them two, they actually play sisters in the show. So
okay.
Yeah. All right, so that's enough of talking about. Of course, not enough, but there's never enough you can talk about in terms of Black women in excellence. But we have to kind of transition to the actual part of the show where we talk about Meghan. Yes, we got to talk about Meghan. Okay, of course. What part of Georgia did you grow up? You grew up in Georgia, correct, or do I have it kind of wrong?
Yeah, so I'm actually originally from Texas. I was born in Houston, raised in Dallas. I moved to Georgia when I was like a kid, like elementary school. And I've been right outside the Metro Atlanta area since then. So I guess you could say I'm practically from here, but I still have Texas roots now. I don't forget that at all. Even though I think, other folks probably like to call me a Georgia peach. I am not. I still have Texas roots at the heart. So.
Okay, well, I won't tell if you won't tell. But as far as as growing up, how was it growing up? Since you said you moved there in elementary school, how was it growing up in Georgia?
Oh, yeah, it's very different. I'll say this, when I first moved here, like just the physical appearance of Georgia was very different, like very hilly, lots of trees, lots of mountains, things that I was not used to seeing. And I think that was a shock. And then also like I've always grown up out in the suburbs. So even here, I didn't realize how packed the suburbs were out here too. So that was a whole nother, like, there's so many people in such a small area. Like what's happening? And I'll be honest with you, like Georgia did not feel like any remotely close to home until probably close to college. Like after I had been here, years. I still missed my family. Most of my family's still, home. And yeah, it was different. You grew up, I spent my childhood there. Like all my like molding and shaping years were spent in Texas. So, you throw something different at that, you're like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know if I like this. It took me a while to kind of like have Georgia like grow on me.
So when in Georgia or in Texas as well, did you play any sports?
Yeah, so I did not play any sports in Texas, but I did play here in Georgia. So I'll tell you a funny story, oddly enough. But when I was in high school, I actually was what you'd call, most people like to call an orchidork. So I played violin for years and years. And it wasn't until I actually needed an elective on my schedule that I was like, you know what, this seems interesting. Like, let's throw this in here. It was actually weight training. Realized I was really good, at lifting weights and that sort of thing. I really liked it as a stress relief, but I was actually naturally strong for as small as I am. And I remember one of the coaches came up to me. He's like, "Hey, would you be interested in playing football?" And I'm like, that sounds like a lot of fun, but I don't think my parents would go for it. And of course, no, my mom was like, absolutely not. No. So I just kind of took that, threw it in the back pocket. Like, we'll come back to it. So I continued playing violin, and then I learned that my high school was getting a lacrosse team. And lacrosse is a combination of football, basketball, soccer. Like, it's a lot of sports at once, hockey, all at once. And so when I came back to my parents and I was like, hey, this is what I want to play, my mom was like, okay, maybe. So I ended up playing lacrosse for my senior season. I really wish I could have played longer, but yeah, I ended up playing lacrosse. But football has always been around in the background. Like, either I was friends with football players, my younger brother played football. We were always going to games. You grow up in Texas, I mean, football is practically in your blood. Like, you're going to be around football. So the fact that I found my way like back to football doesn't surprise me, even with lacrosse thrown in the middle.
All right, all right. Well, we do have someone in the touring the AFC South inbox. Miss Sarah Small said, "Hey, Megan and everyone. Well, hello to you, Sarah." And she
Hi,
hopes that,
Sarah.
the Colts get Anthony Richardson. Now, we may get to that Colts talk a little bit later in the show. Now,
Okay.
for those that aren't aware, Megan does a few things with Colts Wire, and she is a Colts fan. But we're not going to hold that against her. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I got to poke a little bit of fun at you, Megan. Come on now.
I'm not even
But
shocked by that. Not even shocked by that.
but we're going to get into a little bit more about Megan and growing up and how she discovered about writing on sports. But first, we do have to take a commercial break. We'll be right back on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. Whether it's local or long distance, Milligan Logistics has you covered. Milligan Logistics was established in 2020 with over a combined 15 years of experience in trucking, hauling, and logistics, along with over 50 years collectively of project management experience. Again, whether it's near or far, Milligan Logistics has you covered with quality service, efficiency while taking pleasure in exceeding clients' expectations. Need goods moved short or long distance? Milligan Logistics has you covered. Just reach out to them at 615-354-2618. That's 615-354-2618. Or you can send them an email at milliganlogistics@gmail.com. And again, that's milliganlogistics@gmail.com. All right, and we're back. And before we left, we kind of poked a little fun at the Colts. We're going to get there to the Colts talk, but I have to ask, you didn't really discover writing in terms of sports writing early, but when did you discover writing in general?
Oh, that's a good question. So fun fact is I've actually always been a really good writer. I just never really tapped into it, to be quite honest with you. Always did really well in like any of my English classes. I remember I think I tested out of one of my English classes when I got to college, just being, fairly decent writer. Um, that always came naturally to me, but it was never something that I thought would be like a passion at any point. And it wasn't until last year. Yeah, I would say, oh gosh, we're rolling up on almost a year now. But last year when I got the opportunity to just take all my ranting as a fan and actually put it in a, a dedicated space and started writing for about the Colts and the AFC South for a company called Stadium Rant. And that was just a casual kind of thing, and now it's not so casual.
Well, I hear you there. So let me kind of bring everything together for everyone that's kind of missed a little bit of that. You were working your day job, you were
Yeah.
writing, and then also I'm going to throw in there another thing you were doing. You were actually doing a podcast too. So
Hmm.
doing all those things, how did you find the time?
I get asked that question so much, like so much. And to be honest with you, I don't know. I just found it. Like it was one of those things where I'll say this. When I first started, it was like, hey, you're gonna write 2 articles a week or whatever else. Cool. Then it became, hey, can you add in a podcast? Okay, cool. So we started doing that. But I think it started to become fun, right? And when it started to become fun and I was passionate about what I was writing about, what I was speaking about, like I started finding the windows. Like, ooh, I got 3 hours. Great. I can sneak in some writing. Oh, I got, time on a Friday night where I'm not doing anything and I would probably be scrolling my phone. Great. There's a podcast time. Like we just started finding these pockets of windows. And I think the more that, well, to be honest with you, the more that the season went along and it was painful, it was a painful season, the more cathartic the writing and the podcasting became. So it became a lot easier. But I would also say that it was a lot of it was support from my husband. Like he was like, he saw how passionate I was about it. He saw how much it made me happy. And if I told him like, hey, we're gonna record a podcast, he's like, okay, cool. What do you need from me? Or hey, I'm gonna go write. And usually I would do my writing at night, like after, my kids are in bed and things like that. But it allowed me to quiet down everything from the day and I could just talk about sports. I could just talk about football. And so that became easy. And that became my like, oh, okay, I get to write tonight. Like that, that became my kind of outlet. And it was nice because again, we were having a terrible season. So it was like, okay, how can I like get out all these raw emotions I have about my team in a way that's organized and that makes sense and that maybe somebody else will, relate to it. It was through writing.
Well, you hear people wearing sunglasses at night. Hey, people write at night too. But as far as me, I had a story. You talked about kind of finding time to write. Back when I first started writing, I'm gonna kind of age for anyone that's listening. I did not have a computer, so
Oh man,
I wrote on my actual phone. I had a BlackBerry at the time, and I would literally
a BlackBerry
on my phone. I literally would write all my articles, 250, 300 some odd words. I would proofread them, do all those different things, and pictures from my phone. Which
oh man,
I tell people this. These days. Like, you really did what? You must have really loved to write if you wrote from your phone. I'm like, yeah, I did. I caught the bug. Is all I could say.
yeah.
But now I want to go back a little bit. You said in terms of writing sports, it kind of caught the bug. You liked a nice little segue there, even though bug caught the bug. But anyway, you kind of started writing and then writing sports and you felt passionate about it. You said I saw the passion that you kind of poured into it. But can you take us back to the time when it first started, when you first felt that burst of energy to actually write? And I'm pretty sure it was probably with Stadium Rant, but can you take us back to that moment in time?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I got I think I got tagged in a tweet and someone was like, "Hey, they're looking for, Colts fans to write." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So anyways, go through the whole process of getting set up with Stadium Rant and I wrote my first couple articles and felt pretty decent about them, right? Like I got some decent little traction on it. Hey, this is really cool that you write. Um, and then I started cranking out, just the 2 articles that I was required of me at the time. And um, eventually I realized I wanted to write like more. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'll just keep that in the back of my mind. Stadium Rant comes to me and they're like, hey, would you be interested in being managing editor of Indie at the time, what was IndieIntercept.com, which is their cult site. And I'm like, I've never done managing editor duties, but yeah, sure, let's roll with it. So that that increased my ability not only for me to write, like I was required to write quite a bit, but I had to look at other people's articles. And then I realized it became a passion for storytelling was because I was helping other people tell their stories and tell their thoughts, right? Like it went from just a casual, like, hey, Meg, you're just going to write and you're going to say your thoughts to now I have other people who I can teach how to write stories. Like maybe they're fans as well. And maybe writing is not necessarily their strong suit or, hey, storytelling is in a structured way is not their strong suit, but I can help here because I'm a content creator through and through, and that's what I do in my day job, and I'm now doing content in the evenings. And so I think it was then at that point when I brought I essentially brought my skills to the team. You're talking about a team of 5 guys at this point, who were all Colts fans as well, former players as well, who were also wanting to write, but just hey, maybe again, writing's not their strong suit, but they hey, we want to rant in a proper space. But I think it was that time where it was like, hey, I'm teaching them how to write, teaching them how to, put together stories and put together concepts. And I think it was right in the midst of that, like probably, I don't know, October of last year, where I was like, this is really fun. Like, this is really, really fun. And I really enjoyed the writing. And I enjoyed not only, of course, pitching stories and ideas with them, but I enjoyed the writing even outside of helping them. Like my writing by myself was like, it just became exponentially better. And I think that was the thing. Like I realized then, like, I'm a storyteller. That is what I do.
Okay, storyteller. Okay, now from there, the passion picked up. I want to tell everyone about kind of your news and what you're doing now and your transition you're making. If that's okay with you, can I tell everyone about that?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So now, this passion has gone up another level of wanting to kind of make this it, basically. So now you're enrolled in Full Sail University. For those that aren't aware, of course, can you explain what Full Sail is, by the way?
Yeah, so Full Sail is, I would say, probably one of the premier colleges, universities in the country as far as being tapped into a particular industry. So in my case, it is sports, media, entertainment. They've got, amazing connections from former players, former directors, actors. I mean, you name it, they've got the tools there, and these people are dedicated to helping other people, achieve their dreams. So I think for me, Full Sail is it's literally a launch. It's, hey, put you in the water and go, so to speak. All the puns
Okay.
intended.
Well, there you go. There you go. Now, your ultimate, we know that you're passionate. We know you have the drive to do this, but in enrolling in Full Sail University and trying to kind of make a career of this, what do you kind of see is your ultimate dream with pursuing this?
Yeah, I think honestly the biggest thing for me is, one, just to be happy. That was the first thing. Like, can I be happy with anything that I do? I think the second thing was not to hide the creative in me, not to hide the storyteller in me. So if I get to do that in any sort of space, I think I'll be happy. But I realize I'm happiest when I'm telling stories about sports, and mainly football. Football is obviously the focal point there. But I'm a basketball fan, baseball fan. If you're watching this live, I've got my Braves hat on. Today's opening day. But just telling sports stories in general, I think would be the goal there. But I think for me, it's like, how can I get to a national platform where I'm able to be like a Joy Taylor, for example, who's on Speak on Fox Sports, that sort of arena where she is so knowledgeable and so comfortable in who she is. She says what she thinks, she speaks her truth, and completely goes on about her business, and she handles it like the wonderful woman that she is. Would love to do something like that where I'm able to sit in that kind of space with my peers who respect me for what I am. It's a community, right? Like it's a welcome community where she is welcome, and I want to emulate that as well. Like, I want to be able to tell people that, like, hey, this is possible, and you can tell stories in a very varying ways, but would love to do that on a national platform.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, you do have an adoring fan, of course, that is has checked into the Touring the AFC South inbox. Again, that would be Miss Sarah Small. Said she loves your article, Meghan. Keep killing it. So hey, there
Thank
you go.
you.
I'm
Sarah,
sorry.
listen,
Let me
Sarah's a real one.
let me say it exactly how she said it. I love your articles, Meghan. Keep killing it, girl. That's how she said it. But I kind of shortened it up, and I did whatever with it. But let me do it justice, since Sarah said it and not me. But
I appreciate you, Sarah. I do a whole lot.
all right. Well, we're gonna take a quick commercial break. We're gonna come right back. We're gonna have a couple more questions, and yes, we do have a game on this episode. Gonna be fun. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh
But
my
anyway,
gosh.
it's gonna be fun. You're definitely gonna enjoy it. But first, a commercial break on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. Did you see my picture on the artwork for the show? Well, it was taken by Joshua Silver's photography. Let me tell you, he handled the whole shoot with class and professionalism, and he can do the same for you. Whether it's a model shoot, couples photos, headshots, maternity shoot, senior photos, or more, he has you covered. Just give him a call at 423-557-6746. Again, that's 423-557-6746. Or you can check him out on Instagram at Joshua Silvers Photography to book your shoot. Again, Joshua Silvers Photography, where class and professionalism meets great photos. All right, and we're back for the last segment of Touring the AFC South. but of course not the least important. But of course, I didn't ask you, and for those that know Megan, you know that she is a Colts fan. I did not ask you, how did you become a Colts fan?
Yeah, that's a good question, in which I get a
The
lot.
Colts fan, Colts fan in Atlanta, by the way. Colts fan in Atlanta. Let's
Mhm,
let's just give
mhm.
everybody the entire scenario. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So, as you know from listening to the beginning of the podcast, I am originally from Texas, and when I grew up, I was a Cowboys fan. Right, like that is just almost innate. You're going to be a Cowboys fan for, I would say, probably 80% of the folks. Then you have Texans fans as well, of course. But for me, like I grew up a Cowboys fan. I watched whatever my family watched. But as I got older and started watching more and more football, I was like, okay, well, hey, Cowboys are cool, but I don't want that heartbreak all the time. I don't necessarily like want that for my life. That's not what I had envisioned. And so I just started watching more football, started, paying a lot more attention. And I would say, probably when I was in high school, when I started becoming more and more aware of certain players on the field, and people making plays. And I remember watching the Colts march to the Super Bowl, and I remember being at a Super Bowl party, and the entire house that we're at is everybody's going for the Bears because they've like counted the Colts out. Which, hey, I get it. Bears were playing like great football at this point, Devin Hester included. Um, but I remember saying to myself, you know what? Like, hey, I'm gonna go for the Colts. Like Peyton Manning had been like tearing people up left and right. Like I just love the way that he commanded the field. They don't call him the sheriff for nothing. And yeah, end up watching, of course, the Colts come back in the Super Bowl. They win that Super Bowl, and I was hooked from then on. I was like, all right, I'm in. And I will admit, I was a little casual for like at least maybe a year or two after that. But I started playing flag football in college, and I started playing fantasy football. And that changed a whole lot for me of how I understood the game and how I understood like what certain players do. Because my fantasy success was tied to it, and it actually helped me learn who was on my team. Because I was making rookie mistakes, like drafting my own wide receivers and things like that. But it helped me learn. So when Peyton Manning left, I stayed. When Andrew Luck came and left, I stayed. And I think for me, it became a way to just utilize the knowledge that I did have in a more productive way, in terms of like, fantasy football. And then it became, oh, you play fantasy football? That's really cool as a woman, because there weren't a whole lot of women at that time playing fantasy football. And that turned into me like tweeting about my fantasy football, and then it became me analyzing games and running tape back, and yelling with my family about games, and getting into arguments with people about things that I saw. So yeah, I knew I was like deep in the trenches when I went to my very first NFL game some years back. It was actually here in Atlanta. It was a Colts Falcons game, and I went with my best friend. And I remember being in the stands, and this is during like the Andrew Luck and like Kobe Fleener days, and I'm calling people out left and right, and she's like, "You're calling these people by their first names like you know them," and I'm like, "I kind of do." Like what? Like I knew I was deep at that point. I felt like these were my guys. So yeah, I've been dedicated for a little while now.
All right, so the Super Bowl did it. That's who we have to blame. I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
and
I'm kidding.
listen. I'll say this. To be fair, though, it's not like I went anywhere. Like you've seen a lot of folks where like their team wins the Super Bowl, and then they're super casual after that. No, I've been in the trenches. So I've been here through all this ugly and these not winning the division, years and things like that. Like I'm still here. I'm actually a fairly loyal person, pretty loyal, I would like to think.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. But I have one more question for you.
All right.
Any advice to anyone, that's thinking of maybe, at some point, hey, this isn't for me anymore. I want to make this my career, or making that pivot, that change in their career, to, kind of move towards something that makes them happy and doing that for a living. Any advice you would have for anyone, especially Black journalists or Black women in media and sports as well?
Oh, that is a spicy question. You know what? I would say the first thing is, yeah, ask yourself what makes you happy. Let's start with there. Like, what's your purpose? What is going to make you happy? What's your purpose? You can answer that question. And even if you don't have the answer to that question, you got to find it first. Once you find that, then you'll be able to, dictate which way that you want to move. I think the biggest thing for anyone, either myself included, is remaining true to who you are. Like, if you know that you are, a reporter by nature, if you know that you're a storyteller by nature, if you know that, like, hey, graphic design is what I want to do, whatever it is, like, do that and be happy. I think we spend a lot of time trying to fit into boxes because this is the expectation, or this is what our parents told us, or this is what society told us. Like, at the end of the day, like, none of that is going to matter if you aren't happy. So I would say start with there. And I would say, as far as like Black journalists or Black media, I think the biggest thing is your representation. The way that you show up in rooms matters. So wherever you go, like, show up as you, 100%, full force. Like, don't be unapologetically you. I think that's the best thing that you can do, because, again, that representation is going to matter not only for you, but for the next person as well. For those, those children that are growing up and seeing you, in spaces they think that they can't be in, but you've now shown them it's possible. So always be you.
There you go. There you go. Don't shrink in the moment. There you go.
Absolutely. Take up the space. Take up the space.
There you go. Now we have come to the end of the show, and we've had a lot of fun getting to know you, Meghan, and to talk about your journey from where you started in Texas to now in Georgia and being a full-on Colts fan in Atlanta. But there is a certain thing called a game that I have on this show. It's 5 questions, it's 2 answers, and you got one choice. I see you chugging a little bit of water, trying to get yourself prepared for the. It's going to be okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. First question. You have to pick one quarterback to be your backup. Are you picking Jacob Eason or Nick Foles?
From the top rope, I see.
I'm talking about the version of Nick Foles that played for the Colts, not the version that played for anyone else.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, I don't even know. Give me Nick Foles still. I don't know what I would be getting with Jacob Eason. I think that was part of the reason why he's no longer on the Colts, is I think he was struggling to learn the playbook as well. So, yeah, even though it's ugly, give me Nick Foles. Oof.
Okay. All right. Here we go. 2 spots in Georgia. Piedmont Park or Georgia Aquarium. Which one would you go for a relaxing day?
I'm actually going to say the park. The aquarium is nice, but it is always packed, always. and yeah, I tend to like outdoor walks in the park, or going. Just sometimes fresh air is good. So yeah, give me the park.
Quick story on that one. Georgia Aquarium, where they had the media party for the Super Bowl when it was in Atlanta last. So I actually was there and got to tour it around and all that different stuff. It was fun. I actually covered that Super Bowl a week, and I covered the previous one that was in Minneapolis. Now
that's really cool.
That was interesting, and it got below zero every day in Minneapolis. Every single day. They never need to have another Super Bowl in Minneapolis. No. No. They need to veto it. Expeditiously. Yes, I use the word expeditiously, just like T.I. does. I used expeditiously. Okay. All right. The next question. 28-3, I'm sorry, which is, of course, Pats versus Falcons, which Falcons fans don't want to remember that. Or 33-0, which is Colts Vikings this past year. Which one was worse?
28-3, easily. It's easily worse. It was in a Super Bowl. Like, I mean, let me say this: that Colts Vikings score was obviously the biggest comeback in NFL history. Like, I get that. I'm not taking that away. But it was in a regular season game. You're talking about 28-3 in a Super Bowl. I actually remember where I was, what was happening, what the room looked like, what people in the room, sounded like, how defeated, like that whole room sounded like. I remember that vividly, like it just happened yesterday. And I still give my husband grief, like a good wife should, every time I see something that's 28-3. So yeah, give me 28-3 all day long.
All right. Okay. Next one. Waffle House for breakfast or at night? And at night, I mean like 2 o'clock in the morning, after the club, hanging out, something. Yeah, that's what I mean at night when it comes to Waffle House.
I'm actually gonna say Waffle House at night. I was a broke college kid at one point, and yeah, plenty of late night runs. Hey, you got $10? Like, let's go scrape something together to go get food at Waffle House. Yeah, give me Waffle House at night.
Yeah, Waffle House at night also give you some interesting stories and some interesting things to watch. You can watch a whole movie play out in front of you if you you go to the select Waffle House in the select neighborhood that you might want to watch it in the movie. But let's see. Of course, you got to cheer for one of these teams: the Titans or the Patriots. Which ones are you going to cheer for?
Good Lord, really, Mike? Yeah, I mean, I think I gotta go Titans, right? Like I got to. That Patriots hate is pretty deep. As a Colts fan, like it's not as bad now because Tom Brady is gone. Like you don't feel the heaviness of that, but I cannot actively root for the Patriots. I would much rather, even though I don't like rooting for the Titans either, I would much rather root for the Titans than the Patriots.
I think this is maybe the one time I would say that I've heard you say you would root for the Titans. So, we might kind of encapsulate this moment here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I love it. But, I love it.
But is the end of 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. I did have a bonus question for you though.
Go for it.
All right. Will Levis or Anthony Richardson? Which one do you want to be your quarterback?
Oh, how did I know this was coming? Let me preface this by saying, if you follow me on Twitter, like my mentions have been in ruins for days over this discourse, like complete ruins for days. We even talked about this on my own podcast earlier in the week about whether it's going to be Levis or Anthony Richardson. Here's what I think. I think that if you're taking either, you need to be prepared for what the upsides are, what the downsides are, right? Obviously, if you're looking at them, I view Bryce Young, CJ Stroud in tier 1, and actually Will Levis and Anthony Richardson are both in tier 2 for me. They're both in that same sort of tier. Makes it tough to pick, which one that you would want. Will Levis brings a whole lot to the table. But I think Anthony Richardson's his ceiling is a lot higher. Like the potential is almost out the roof. If I had to pick, if I'm the Colts and I'm picking at 4, I'm going Anthony Richardson. And not because I don't believe in Will Levis. It's not that. I think that the amount of things that you could get out of Anthony Richardson would be almost astronomical. I think that for him, it is all about reps and he needs those. I think that the coaching would make a big difference. Like Shane Steichen and I think an Anthony Richardson would be, a beauty of a match made in heaven. Shane Steichen's super smart, super intelligent, sees the field like a QB sees. He would be able to so much into Anthony Richardson, along with Cam Turner, the quarterback coach. Yeah, if I had to pick, I would say Anthony Richardson. I think Colts lead that way as well. And that's the rumblings I've heard too. So we'll see.
No. Okay. All right. We shall indeed see. But now I've got an interesting thing to throw out there. You did say his ceiling is higher, Anthony Richardson. Funny thing you said that is because at his pro day, he was throwing the football and the football hit the ceiling in the little dome that he was in. So that was quite funny to watch that. Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is they asked him about it afterwards and he said, he jokingly says, he's like, oh, well, I saw Will Levis do it. So I had to try to put a hole through the ceiling. I thought it was funny because, 3 out of the 4 top quarterback prospects all hit the ceiling in their in their respective pro days. So, I thought it was hilarious. I didn't see anything wrong with the throw. I mean, hey, it made for a fun end to the workout, I thought.
Well, I would throw a Michael Jordan line in there that he said, but I'm not going to throw that in on this show. But of course, we have reached the end of the show. I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank you, Meghan, for coming on the show, kind of giving us everyone your journey. Of course, talking about what all you're doing now, or what are you kind of done to lead up to what you're doing now. What I want to do now is kind of give you the floor, let you talk about what are you working on, where people can find you on social media. The floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is you can find me on Twitter. It's at the Meghan Hall. Same thing on Instagram. Real Life Blue Stories podcast is my podcast. You can find that on Apple and Spotify and YouTube, of course. Also on TikTok. Also on the Horseshoe Pride podcast. So if you heard me talk about it earlier in the show, my guys that I was riding with at Stadium Rant, we've stayed with each other, and now we have a podcast where we chop it up like hey, like we're just watching TV. And so we have a podcast called Horseshoe Pride Podcast, and that comes out. Those episodes are coming out every couple of weeks now with the off season here. So that's fun. It's a really lovely listen, really, honestly. If you like chaos, yeah, come listen to us. I think outside of that, where you can find me writing, so it's Colts Wire, so coltswire.usatoday.com. You'll find all my stuff plus stuff from our staff as well. I'm continuing to write, continuing to create content all the time. I think this is just a really nice avenue to be able to do it now, and I can do it dedicated. I'm no longer ranting from my couch. I'm now ranting into the universe, and I love it. So
yeah,
there's my spiel.
She kind of got in the game now. Now she is in the game.
Yes, so, definitely in the game.
All right. Well, I want to thank again for everyone for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at MikePatton82. That's MikePatton 82 on Twitter. You can also find me on Instagram at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. As far as touring the AFC South, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. Of course, you can find it on YouTube if you like to watch it visually. Of course, when you watch all those things, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And then also rate the show. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and leave a review. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you all again for tuning in to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.